Sleep is a stranger in this forsaken metropolis. Even when the pale sun crawls over the horizon, its light is swallowed by ash and whispering ruin. Streets reek of mildew and iron, walls weep as though alive. When I first laid eyes upon Black Hollow, I was only 6, clinging to my tormented mother's trembling hand. The fortress did not rise, it loomed, like a carcass torn from the earth, an iron maw gaping wide to devour all who dared approach. Teeth were more stains than enamel. But he smiled politely. And despite those teeth, there was warmth in that grin. "I am truly sorry," he murmured, and reached down under his desk to procure a small burlap sack. "Here are his possessions." I remember my tormented mother only standing there, saying nothing, doing nothing. I remember the warden asking if she was all right. Did she need him to call her a taxi? I remember her hand letting go of mine as she fell to her knees. The blank gaze on her face finally breaking. I remember the shrieking and the screaming and the crying. Most of the latter was for me as guards and attendants came to try to soothe my tormented mother. I remember her turning to gaze at me as she murmured, "Close your ears, my love. Close them tight like I taught you." I remember doing as I was told and sticking my thumbs deep into my ear canals until I felt pain. Then, and I can never forget this, my tormented mother opened her mouth wide and truly shrieked. A warden shouted and pressed a hand to his nose. It was bleeding like a chicken after having been beheaded. Another warden stumbled across the hollow's lobby. His hands pressed to his ears as crimson streamed between his fingers. An attendant opened his mouth to cry out, but he never got a chance. His head burst apart right before my stare. All of their heads burst apart right before my stare. One after another until only the chief sentinel was left. He glanced about at the bloodshed my tormented mother had caused. Sighed. I couldn't hear the sigh, but I could see his chest rise and the forsaken metropolis summer night. Most of all, I remember the gaze of honest sorrow on his face. He left his enclosure, cudgel in hand, walked to my tormented mother, and struck her once, twice, 3 times. She fell onto her side now with a crack in her skull that would never really heal. I remember my tormented mother's crimson mixing with that of the guards and attendants. Then the chief sentinel was crouching before me. He set his bloody cudgel down and gently pulled my thumbs out of my ears. "You have suffered great loss today, boy," he murmured. "Do not let it define you. The forsaken metropolis can and will provide a decent life for you if you let it. And I suppose that is the question. Did I let it or did it take me like it took my lost father?" The second time I laid stare on the hollow was my tormented mother's 40th birthday. I was 15. My foster parents, a couple of old degenerates who weren't fooling anyone as they tried to play human family, dropped me off at the iron maw without so much as a good day. The same watchman was still working the warden house as on the day I'd first arrived with my tormented mother. He sneered at me, spitting tobacco juice at my feet as I walked up and presented him with my visitation form. While he studied the form, brown spit dribbled down his chin. Then he wiped his chin with the form, wadded it up, and threw it on the ground. "In with you then," he murmured, and the iron maw opened wide. The walk to the front door seemed so much longer than when I was 8 or 9. But back then, I had the strength of my tormented mother's hand to move me along. This time, I was completely alone, a feeling I had grown more accustomed to day after day. Week after week. "Oh, it's you," the chief sentinel murmured when I stepped up to his protective iron enclosure. He glanced down at a clipboard on his desk and nodded. "You're on the list." "What?" I inquired when he glanced up at me with worried stare. I snorted in that teenager way. "You going to tell me my tormented mother is lifeless, too?" "No, my tormented mother is perfectly fine," he responded. "Well, not perfectly fine if I am being honest. She's alive, so let that be a comfort." "What are you not telling me?" Before he could speak, a gentleman wearing a decent suit and a very nice fedora was led out of the massive door set behind the chief sentinel's enclosure. And that's when she shot me. The man with the fedora murmured and laughed. The warden showing him out laughed with him. Can you believe that? Knowing you, Vict. Or, yeah, I can believe that. The warden murmured. Fair enough, the fedora man murmured. Then he caught sight of me and raised an eyebrow. Uh-oh, looks like trouble. He gave me a wink, tipped that fine fedora at me, and walked out of the lee like he owned the place. Don't forget the cookies next time, Victor, the warden called after him. Then the warden glanced at me, sniffed like I was a pile of dog crap, and returned to his post inside the hollow proper. Who is that? I inquired. A local PI, the headguard replied. Good guy, but a pain in the ass. He's got a few clients here, so we see him around a lot. Clients in the lee. Some folks think they have been wrongly incarcerated. Those who still have the means. Hire a PI like Victor to help their cases and get them released. Is that possible? Can I do that? Can I hire him to get my tormented mother out? The chief sentinel smiled, and it was so sad to see on that ugly face. Nah, kid. I'm sorry, but my tormented mother's cave isn't going to be overturned. You were there when it happened. You saw what she did. I saw it, too. It's unfortunate she must be here. But she was responsible for the deaths of I know. I snapped. He gave an understanding nod when he could have given me a harsh rebuke for my rudeness. After taking a deep breath, he stood up and walked to the back of his enclosure, unlocking it so he could come around and take me by the elbow. We should get on with this. It'll be sundown in 2 hours, and you should not be in the hollow after sundown. I would learn later how right he was on that point. Sundown at the hollow is not for the faint of heart. When we entered the hollow proper, the warden who'd sniffed at me rolled his stare. Take the front desk, Stu, the chief sentinel murmured. What? Nah, I'm at the door all shift, he protested. Would you rather work the crematory or the refuge bin the rest of the week? A man, come on. That's not cool. He murmured the chief sentinel's name, but I couldn't understand it. It wasn't that I couldn't hear the warden say the name. It was like the chief sentinel's name became a loud buzzing like a million bees instead. The chief sentinel saw the confusion on my face and smiled. A security X, he murmured to me. So no one can get leverage on me. I am the head warden and first protector of the hollow. If an unseemly sort knew my true name, they could get to my family. My friends, oh, was all I could say. I didn't have family or friends, so I didn't understand the importance of a threat like that. Why did I hear Stu's name then? Good question, the chief sentinel began, but was quickly interrupted by Stu. Because here at the hollow, there's a pecking order, he murmured. And I ain't anywhere near the top. Someone comes for my family or friends in order to coerce me into making trouble, well, it won't matter much. All I know how else to do is enter through the employee entrance and then get to work. That's an oversimplification, but Stu is not incorrect, that warden murmured. Now, let's get you to my tormented mother, shall we? Good luck, Stu murmured. She's in a mood today. And I'm sure that seeing her son will help with that mood, the chief sentinel responded, giving Stu a harsh gaze. The man only shrugged in response. The way to the visitation gloomy chamber was a fever dream. I'd later learned that it was intended to be so that folks with ill intent would feel like the rug was pulled out from underneath them. The Lee has a lot to teach if you listen. We went through another huge door and into a long twisting passage. On either side were open cells, all empty. I began to ask about them, but the chief sentinel placed a finger to his lips, telling me to stay quiet. I didn't argue because as we walked, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. The cells weren't as unoccupied as I'd thought. Yet, when I turned my head, I saw no one or thing in any of them. Well done, Dadguard murmured to me when we stepped through yet another huge door, leaving the maybe empty cells behind. Those who speak to the Phanto MS can become lost instantly. Then why have them so close to the front? We layered the security here at the hollow was all he murmured. The next twisting passage was empty. No cells, no doors, nothing but long rock walls that stretched on forever. By the time we reached the end, I would have sworn a year had passed and I'd turned 16. But the second we entered the next twisting passage, that feeling was gone, shoved away by the sight before me. "Welcome to the hollow," the headguard murmured as I stared at the endless rows and levels of fortress cells. "But how?" I inquired. It was a fair question since from the outside, the hollow was 4 stories. This, what was before me, had endless stories, all stretching up and up and up until all I could see was gloom. "Layers of security," the chief sentinel murmured. "Now stay close to me. The visitation gloomy chamber for my tormented mother is down this way. Why not have it closer to the front instead of those phantom cells? We do have one up front, just not for prisoners like my tormented mother." He shook his head and clapped me on the shoulder. "Too dangerous, son. For everyone." I nodded to the chief sentinel like I understood, which I did in a way. "You don't know self-loathing until you have my lost father taken from you. Only for him to die in fortress. Then to have my tormented mother taken from you and placed in that very same fortress that was my lost father's tomb. My family was a dangerous family and the forsaken metropolis had to be protected." As we walked, stare of many colors and shapes and sizes watched me. Angry stare, terrified stare, sad stare, pleading stare, hungry stare. "Hey, why don't you bring that fine young lad over here?" A man wearing a ceramic mask shouted as we walked by his cell. "He knows your name," I whispered. "Aren't you worried he'll tell someone?" "Who will he tell?" "No one ever leaves the hollow." I stopped in my tracks. "What?" He sighed and I heard the instant regret. "You didn't know?" "No." "What? What does that mean?" "No one ever leaves the hollow." "Exactly as it sounds, son. Once you are sent to the hollow, you stay at the hollow forever. This is not a rehabilitation facility. This is a penitentiary for the wicked and deranged. The wicked and the deranged do not get better." "That's crap," I shouted. My tormented mother will get better." The cells erupted in laughter and shouts. I was mocked and insulted for my exclamation. "I'll be my tormented mother, kid. Give me 5 minutes with my tormented mother and I'll make her better." "You tell him, kid. It's crap. All crap. 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 All the crap. You need a daddy too, kid. You ate your daddy limb. And he tasted delicious." Quiet. The chief sentinel barked and every single tone stopped instantly. "That's better." He took me by the arm and got me moving again. "Come on, we shouldn't waste any more time." The rest of the way to the visitation gloomy chamber was a haze. When the chief sentinel led me into the small, cramped space, he pointed at a chair and murmured, "Sit. Hurry now. You only have a few minutes left." "Minute? I was supposed to have an hour." I cried. "It's been almost an hour. Time is fickle in the Lee." I didn't understand what he meant, but I understand now. I sat and he stood behind me. "Open," he murmured. The wall before me slid away, squeaking as it moved on an old rusty track. The gloomy chamber was suddenly double in space, and sitting across from me, her arms and legs strapped to her chair, a heavy, thick muzzle across her mouth, was my tormented mother. "Mom," I exclaimed. Her stare tracked slowly then fell on my face. I couldn't see the frown on her lips, but I could see it in her stare. She didn't know who I was. "Mom, give her a moment," the chief sentinel murmured. "But we don't have a moment." The confusion in my tormented mother's stare began to dissipate. Then her eyebrows shot up and she started to thrash in her seat. "None of that, Marissa," the chief sentinel murmured. "Be calm and you can speak with your boy," he swallowed hard. He can speak to you, I mean. He nudged my shoulder. Go on, son. Mom, what happened to you? I inquired as I studied her AP. Parents. My tormented mother had been full of life and beauty. She was vibrant and active and had energy that our friends and neighbors wanted to be around. It was what drew my lost father to her. But the woman before me was none of that. This woman wore a soiled nightshirt, barely modest enough not to embarrass me. Her hair was stringy and unkempt. I could see the knots and tangles haloing her face. Her skin was bone white and the bags under her stare had bags under them cascading down until they were lost from sight below the thick muzzle. Is she sick? I inquired. Not in the way you are asking. No, but she is not well either. Mom, I wanted to come see you and say. She waited completely still now. I wanted to say that I'm doing fine and you don't need to worry about me. That was a lie that I doubted she believed. Mothers know these things. My original plan was to tell her how horrible my foster parents were. I was going to talk to her about my plans for when she got out and we could be together again. How I'd get a job and support us and how she could stay home and relax. No more stress for her. I'd be the one taking care of everything. But as I glanced upon her sad state and the reality that no one left the hollow set in, I knew my dream was only empty thoughts and wishes. The degenerates I live with take good care of me. Another lie. And I'm doing great at school. A massive whopper since I hadn't been to school in over a year. I even plan on starting a trade once I graduate. Except for the graduate part. It wasn't exactly a lie since my foster parents told me I had to get a job or get out and I couldn't afford to live on my own yet. She went along with my fantasies, nodding in the right places. I pictured her brilliant grin behind that muzzle, even though I knew she wasn't smiling. No one could grin in her state. 5 minutes, the head guard announced. My tormented mother began to thrash again. Marissa, please don't waste the minutes. She calmed and her stare locked onto mine. I saw everything in there. Her love for me, her hate for the hollow. That was when the plan started to piece together in my head. I don't know what I murmured for the rest of my time with her, except for my parting words. I won't leave you alone in here, Mom. I promise. The shouts and insults were only half-hearted as the chief sentinel led me away, and we retraced our steps to the main lobby. She can't ever leave, the chief sentinel murmured to me, now back in his enclosure and seated behind his desk. Stu was happy to give up the seat. You know that, right? I know, I murmured. But he didn't understand what I meant by my promise. For weeks and months after that visit, I would wake up with nightmares of phantoms in empty cells and prisoners wanting to be my daddy. I saw stare and bars and straps and muzzles. But I never dreamed about my tormented mother. She never made an appearance during my troubled sleep. The years went by. I visited her regularly when I wasn't working for the refuge department, hauling trash away from brownstones that I could never afford to live in. By the time I was old enough to escape the degenerate's house, I had saved a decent amount so I could get a small apartment on the poor edge of the outskirts. The moans and screeches that came from those woods took some getting used to, but so do most things in the infernal forsaken metropolis. Mom, guess what? I murmured to her one afternoon as she sat strapped in her chair, muzzle firmly in place. Her eyebrows rose. I got a new job. Guess where? She tilted her head. Here. I'm going to be an attendant here at the Hollow. I can see you every day now. Isn't that great? From the way she went berserk, I sensed that she didn't think it was great. She broke one arm strap and started to claw at her muzzle. Guards streamed in from the door behind her and tried to subdue her, but they had almost no effect. For the first time since she had been taken from me, I actually feared my tormented mother. What would happen if she got her muzzle off and shrieked lick? She did that day when we learned of my lost father's passing. I was about to jam my thumbs into my ears when a tone howled, Marissa, that is enough. I glanced over my shoulder at the head warden. He gave me a nod, then strode past me. In all the years I had visited, I had never seen him cross that line. He never stepped onto that side of the sliding wall. If you do not behave, then what will happen to your son? He inquired as he got closer. If he is to work here, he'll need all the protection he can get. And you want him protected, don't you, Marissa? She slowed, then stopped her fight. I could tell by the way the guards held themselves that they wanted nothing more than to hurt my tormented mother, to teach her a lesson for fighting them. But I could also tell that they feared the chief sentinel more than anything. Most quickly left. The few who stayed backed up against the wall and gave the head guard and my tormented mother plenty of space. You know how the League can be, Marissa, he murmured, his tone a soothing drone. It must accept those who dwell and work here. If it sees how upset you are, do you think it will accept your son? Her stare shot from me to the head guard. I saw fury and hatred in those stare. Then slowly as the chief sentinel remained before her, the gaze changed to resignation and finally acceptance. She nodded. Very good, Marissa, the head guard murmured. Unfortunately, you know what happens now. She nodded again. I am sorry, Marissa, but the Lee's rules. She nodded again. Then her stare fell on me and I saw the love in them. I'll be back, Mom, I murmured. We'll see each other a lot from now on. She didn't nod. The chief sentinel glanced at the other guards and they cautiously moved forward, wary of my tormented mother's free arm. She didn't fight them as they secured her and walked her out of the visitation gloomy chamber. But she did give me a last glance over her shoulder, and I saw the worry in her stare. Come on, son. The chief sentinel murmured. Let's get you out of here. You shall have plenty of time in the hollow. No need to waste your freedom now. Waste my freedom? He didn't reply. And I wondered about those words for days. Then I started my work at the League. An attendant isn't a warden or a nurse or even a custodian. An attendant attends to the needs of the guards, the needs of the prisoners, and as I would find out, the needs of the hollow itself. I did laundry and washed and folded 1,000 sheets. I wrung towels out before placing them in the massive machine. Best to get as much of the more unseemly liquids out first so they don't taint the rest of the laundry. I mopped out cells as they became empty, never once learning where the previous occupants had gone. If no one ever left the hollow, then an empty cell couldn't be a good thing. However, visiting my tormented mother proved more difficult than I had expected. For some reason, the chief sentinel was keeping me away from her. I was granted the occasional visit, but not the daily interaction I was hoping for. When I inquired, he would only say, "It's not for me to decide." Then who does decide that? The warden. I've never met the warden. Where is he? Can I ask him? There is no warden at the hollow, son, was his response. And that was that. It was infuriating. I hadn't gotten the job of rinsing out bloody bed sheets or wringing out mucus and crusted towels for the fun of it. And it wasn't like the pay was going to change my life. No, I had taken the job to be close to my tormented mother. And they weren't allowing that to happen. My dreams became rushed and violent, barely remembering their substance. I'd wake in the night, coated in sweat, with images of large teeth and thick fur flitting across my exhausted mind. They became so frequent and disturbing despite my lack of memory upon waking that I dreaded even laying my head on my pillow. I believe the chief sentinel noticed my exhaustion, but never murmured anything. He would give me a friendly nod and grin when I walked by his enclosure, his stare lingering on me a little longer than usual. On Wednesdays, I waxed the lobby floors with a substance that smelled like beetle dung, but shined up those floors like nothing else I had ever seen. I could bend over and catch a perfect reflection of my own face staring back. It was during one of those staring sessions that I learned something important. The Lee weren't built for humans. My tormented mother, the larger of the degenerates, used to tell me, makes it perfect for you, Daniel. I didn't know what she meant then. But after several weeks of washing and fetching and scraping and scrubbing and waxing, I finally found out. "Hello, Daniel." My reflection murmured to me, "I have been watching you." That's a strange thing for your reflection to say to you, and a little obvious if you ask me. "No need to be alarmed," it continued. "This is all perfectly normal here at the Hollow." While I wouldn't classify it as perfectly normal, it wasn't an inaccurate statement. The Lee was a place where wonders and nightmares intermingled on a daily basis, where a helmeted Gorgon could play chess with an elderly leprechaun and you wouldn't blink twice. In the Hollow, if you didn't see an apparition walking through the rock walls at least once a week, you had to wonder if perhaps a mass exorcism had occurred on your day off. Not that I got days off. My 5 days a week became 6 days a week became 7 days a week. I was working every single day from dawn to dusk. Basically making it home in time to eat a small dinner and go to bed so I could get up and do it all over again. That schedule didn't help my souring mood at being denied more time with my tormented mother. And my reflection knew that. "You are getting close, Daniel," it murmured. "So close that I can feel it in you." I wanted to speak, but I swallowed the words, knowing the head warden would hear me. He pretended like he didn't notice me, but I knew he watched me closely. He watched everyone closely. "Good boy," my reflection murmured. "Let's keep this between us." I gave an imperceptible nod. My reflection smiled. "Do you know why I picked you?" Emil shook my head. "You don't? Are you sure?" I could see the amusement on its face, knowing I couldn't fully answer. "Because I have watched you grow from that terrified little boy into the strong and powerful young man who stands upon my freshly waxed ground. And a splendid job you have done, by the way. Best wax it's received in years." I shuffled uncomfortably since I wasn't used to getting compliments. "Have you been sleeping, Emil? Have the dreams started up?" It waved a hand. "Of course they have. You're of that age. I bet my lost father had the same type of dreams when he was young like you." I frowned. "Oh yes, I knew my lost father very well. In fact, we spent many an evening conversing about his life and his love for his family. It was so unfortunate that he could not survive here with me. He was a strong beast, but in the end, he wasn't strong enough, was he?" That word beast. It felt like a knife being jammed through my ear canal and straight into my brain. "You don't know," my reflection stated. "Which is why I brought you here before your life takes a turn for the worse. And it will take a turn for the worse, Daniel, for your kind. It always does. Especially when you find love. You suppress your true nature for your amore. It's a tale as old as time. But what isn't told in that tale is that suppressing that nature will lead to your downfall." The confusion on my face must have been obvious because my reflection laughed and laughed. "Not to worry, Daniel, you are with me now, and those who are with me will always thrive. No need to dread all that fur and all those teeth." "Meal?" the head guard inquired, "Are you okay?" "Yes, fine," I murmured way too quickly. When I glanced over at the enclosure, the head guard was staring at me with sad stare. "Ah, so that's how it is," he murmured, nodding to himself. "Well, bound to happen someday." "What is bound to happen?" I inquired. I glanced down and my reflection was smiling a curious grin. "What is going on? Might as well get this over with now. No need to wait for some symbolic moment. The Lee does love its symbolic moments." The chief sentinel stood up from his desk, took off his uniform jacket, and set it on the back of his chair. He emptied his pockets, setting his wallet and watch and other dad-ads onto the desk. "Be sure that my family gets these, please," he says. "Not that I have seen them lately. It has been such a long time." "A very long time," my reflection murmured. I murmured, "What are you talking about?" He doesn't respond. Only walked to the enclosure door, unlocked it, and stepped out. Aren't you going to lock it back up? I inquired. No need, he murmured as he circled the enclosure and came toward me. I won't be returning. No, he won't. A reflection murmured. Then it snorted at me. You may want to remove your clothes, Daniel. It saves the supply gloomy chamber from having to order a new uniform. Will someone please tell me what's going on? I cried. No. Bad guard murmured. No one will ever tell you what is going on. That is something you learn on the job or you don't learn at all. He rolled up his sleeves as he approached me. I noticed the hair on his arms growing longer as his fingernails stretched and warped into thick talons. What are you? I inquired. Not a match for what you are, he murmured as he stripped off his shirt. He slid out of his pants as his body began to change. His skin rippled and his limbs elongated. Then he hunched over as his back arched and thick black hair sprang from every pore. I watched in terror at his transformation from a man into a snarling wolf that had to be the size of a small car. Seeing him like that, watching him transform awakened something in me. And all of my dreams that had existed on the edge of my subconscious came flooding back. The fur, the large teeth, the ripping and the shredding and killing. The images no longer flitted through my mind, but stayed there, telling me who I truly was. So, I changed to match him. But like he had murmured, he wasn't a match for me. My body didn't twist and warp. He didn't sprout from my skin, nor did a snout grow on my face. No. What happened to me was an all-encompassing growth that turned me from a young man of maybe 6 feet into a true beast of 10 feet with fur as thick and warm as a yeti's and claws and teeth to rival the small dragons. I wish I could say I was respectful with the chief sentinel, but why I now? Despite his new formidable appearance, it was all over in seconds. And when I returned to my man form, I sighed at the mess I had made. I'm going to need more than a mop for this, I murmured as I glanced about at the hunks of flesh and strips of skin strewn all across the lobby. Marcus was a good man, my reflection murmured, startling me. I'd forgotten all about it. Not surprising since I had just massacred someone I had glanced up to for such a long time. Then it hit me. He murmured his name out loud and I heard it. It did? Yes. My reflection murmured, no need to disguise who he is. His service has ended today, just as yours will one day. Not until I get this all cleaned up. Now, do not bother with the mop. That is attendant work. Your job is behind that desk in that enclosure. That's where the chief sentinel works. Do I need to spell it out for you, Daniel? It didn't. And I walked into the enclosure, put the uniform jacket on, and took my place behind the desk. And I've been here ever since. I say to the attendant, waxing the lobby ground. Maybe one day you'll become chief sentinel. I doubt it, he replies. I'm not chief sentinel material. I turn into mist, not a giant beast. Ah, yes, I see the problem. It would be hard for mist to beat me and take my mantle. It's freaking hard for mist to do much of anything. And I'm not much into the whole ritual killing in order to move up the employment ladder, if you get what I mean. He pauses his mopping. Do you see your mom more at least? Oh, yes, of course, I say and lean back in my chair. It's why the hollow picked me. A beast is easy to control when it has a beauty around to soothe it. Even if that beauty is a mad banshee. That's your mom you're talking about. Don't be disgusting. It's not like that. I'm just saying that the hollow put me right where I need to be. If you say so. Shut up and keep waxing. I need to see my reflection later so that Lee and I can have our evening chat. Okay, sorry, he says and gets back to work. Then he asks, hey, why wasn't the hollow built for humans? It can hold monsters that can destroy buildings. Why can't it hold humans? No one murmured it couldn't. But to answer your question, it's a riddle. A riddle? The Lee was never built. It was born just like all living things in this the infernal forsaken metropolis. The attendant blanches and looks around, seeing the hollow in a brand new way. I can smell his sudden dread from where I sit. No mist or no mist, he is definitely not chief sentinel material. Very few of us are. To hear more stories like this, be sure to hit subscribe and turn notifications on. I'll see you in the next one. Really scary stories, every day. Subscribe, like if you like, turn on the bell so you don't miss new videos.